1. We've got a real treat for you, a 1980 Cadillac Seville that's been lovingly cared for by the same family for years. This beauty is in superb condition, and it's clear that the owners have put a lot of time and effort into maintaining it. First off, let's talk about the specs. This Seville is powered by a rare 6-liter 8-cylinder engine, which is sure to provide plenty of power and a smooth ride. It's also got a clean title and only 50,000 miles on the odometer, which is pretty impressive for a car that's over 40 years old. Inside, you'll find a luxurious leather interior with all the power features you'd expect from a Cadillac. And if you're worried about maintenance, don't be. The seller notes that the car has been regularly serviced and even comes with fresh oil and a new exhaust system. Now I know what you might be thinking. A car this old must have some issues, right? Well, according to the seller, that's not the case at all. They describe the engine and transmission as being in excellent condition, and the car has been stored during the winters to protect it from the elements. Of course, as with any used car, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a purchase. But based on the seller's description and the photos provided, this Seville looks like it's in fantastic shape. The asking price of $8,500 might seem a bit steep for a car from 1980, but when you consider the rarity of this particular model and the excellent condition it appears to be in, it could be a fair price for the right buyer. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Cadillac that's been well maintained and has plenty of style and character, this 1980 Seville is definitely worth checking out. Just be prepared to act fast. With a car this cool, it's sure to generate plenty of interest from other enthusiasts. 2. We're taking a closer look at a 1970 Cadillac DeVille convertible that's up for sale on Craigslist. This classic ride has a lot to offer, but it's important to note that it's not without its flaws. First, let's talk about the good stuff. According to the seller, this DeVille runs, drives, and stops well, which is always a plus for a car that's over 50 years old. It's also got all the power options you'd expect from a Cadillac of this era, including a power top that's recently been dyed. Under the hood, you'll find a motor from another 1970 DeVille, along with some upgrades like an Edelbrock intake, a new fuel tank and pump, alternator, battery, and regulator. The seller also mentions that the front shocks have been replaced, which should help with the ride quality. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the paint. The seller admits that the paint has seen better days and that it looks like part of the car was painted at some point, resulting in different shades from one panel to another. This is definitely something to keep in mind if you're looking for a show-quality car. The interior has also been reupholstered at some point, which could be a good or bad thing depending on the quality of the work. And while the car does come with a bill of sale and previous registration, the seller notes that the title is missing, which could make transferring ownership a bit more complicated. As for the price, the seller is asking $10,500 for this DeVille. That might seem a bit high for a car with some cosmetic issues and a missing title, but it's important to remember that classic Cadillacs like this one are becoming increasingly rare and desirable. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic convertible that's got some character and a bit of a story to tell, this 1970 Cadillac DeVille might be worth checking out. Just be sure to do your due diligence and get a thorough inspection before making any decisions. And if you've got a pre-1972 car to trade, the seller might be open to making a deal. 3. We've got a real gem to share with you, a 1976 Oldsmobile Cutlass that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. First off, let's talk about the condition of this beauty. According to the seller, the car runs, drives, and looks excellent, which is pretty impressive for a vehicle that's over 45 years old. The paint is described as excellent, and the undercarriage is said to be solid, which is always a good sign when it comes to classic cars. Inside, you'll find a super clean interior that looks like it's been well maintained over the years. And if you're worried about staying cool during those hot summer drives, don't be. This Cutlass comes with ice-cold AC to keep you comfortable. Under the hood, you'll find a 350 Oldsmobile engine paired with a TH350 transmission, which should provide plenty of power and a smooth ride. The seller also notes that the car has good tires and rims, which is always a plus. One thing that really sets this Cutlass apart is its southern origins. The seller emphasizes that the car has no hurricane or flood damage, which is a common concern when it comes to vehicles from certain regions. And with a clean Florida title, you can be confident that you're getting a car with a clear history. Now let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $14,195 for this Cutlass, which includes tax, title, and registration. While that might seem a bit steep for some buyers, it's important to remember that classic cars like this one are becoming increasingly rare and desirable. And with only 80,000 miles on the odometer, this Cutlass still has plenty of life left in it. It's worth noting that the seller is firm on the price and is not open to financing or trades. They also mention that the car is located by appointment only, so if you're serious about making a purchase, be sure to reach out and schedule a time to see it in person. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Oldsmobile that's been well maintained and has plenty of style and character, this 1976 Cutlass is definitely worth checking out. Just be prepared to act fast. With a car this cool, it's sure to generate plenty of interest from other enthusiasts. 4. We've got a real treat for you, a 1984 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am that's sure to get your heart racing. First off, let's talk about the condition of this classic muscle car. According to the seller, it's rust-free and has never been driven in the winter, which is a huge plus for anyone looking for a well-preserved vehicle. The seller does mention a crack in the dash, but otherwise, the car is said to be in good cosmetic condition. Now let's get to the really exciting part, the engine. This Firebird currently has a 406 motor installed, which is sure to provide plenty of power and performance. But if you're a purist, don't worry. The original 305 motor is also included in the sale price, so you can always switch it back if you want to keep things original. The transmission is a manual 5-speed, which is always a fun option for those who love to really feel connected to their car. And if you're worried about staying comfortable during those long drives, you'll be happy to know that this Firebird comes with cold AC to keep you cool and refreshed. One thing that really sets this car apart is its clean title. You can rest assured that you're getting a vehicle with a clear history and no hidden surprises. As for the price, the seller is asking $9,000 for this Firebird. While that might seem a bit steep for some buyers, it's important to remember that classic muscle cars like this one are becoming increasingly rare and desirable. And with only 44,000 miles on the odometer, this Firebird still has plenty of life left in it. The seller doesn't mention anything about the car's location or availability for test drives. So if you're seriously interested, be sure to reach out and ask for more details. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Pontiac Firebird that's been well maintained and has plenty of power and style, this 1984 Trans Am is definitely worth checking out. 5. We've got a 1979 Chevrolet Camaro that's looking for a new home. This classic muscle car has a lot to offer, but it's important to note that it's not without its quirks. First, let's talk about the good stuff. Under the hood, you'll find a 305 small block Chevy engine paired with a 350 turbo transmission, which should provide plenty of power and a smooth ride. The seller also mentions that the car starts up on the first try every time, which is always a good sign. The exterior of the car is finished in a classic red paint job, which is sure to turn heads wherever you go. And if you're looking to make some upgrades, the seller is including a new front bumper cover, trunk deck lid, and hood with a 2-scoop. These parts alone are worth anywhere from $1,200 to $1,700, depending on where you shop. The seller has also made some recent upgrades to the suspension, including new front-end components like swing arms and coil springs, as well as new rear shocks. This should help improve the overall ride quality and handling of the car. Now let's address some of the potential downsides. The seller admits that the odometer reading of 5xx miles is likely incorrect, as they are not the first owner of the car. This means that the true mileage of the vehicle is unknown, which could be a concern for some buyers. Additionally, while the seller describes the car as being in good condition, it's important to keep in mind that this is a subjective term. Without seeing the car in person or getting a more detailed description of its condition, it's hard to say exactly what good means in this case. As for the price, the seller is asking $10,000 for this Camaro. While that might seem a bit steep for a car with an unknown mileage and some potential question marks around its condition, it's important to remember that classic muscle cars like this one are becoming increasingly rare and desirable. And with the included upgrades and new parts, this Camaro could be a great starting point for a restoration project or a fun weekend driver. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Camaro with some potential for upgrades and improvements, this 1979 model might be worth checking out. Just be sure to do your due diligence and get a thorough inspection before making any decisions. And if you're looking for a show-quality car or a numbers-matching original, this might not be the best choice for you. 6. We've got a real treat for you. A 1982 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. First off, let's talk about the specs. Under the hood, you'll find a 307 Olds V8 engine with a 4-barrel carb, paired with an automatic transmission. The seller notes that the car has low miles, with approximately 111,000 on the car itself and only 70,000 on the engine. That's pretty impressive for a car that's over 40 years old. Inside, you'll find some nice features like a Pioneer stereo CD system, tilt steering wheel, AC, and rear defrost. The seller does mention that they're not sure if the stereo or AC are currently working, but the car starts, runs, and drives very nicely overall. One thing that really sets this Cutlass apart is the inclusion of 2 sets of rims. The car currently has aftermarket $15 mag rims, but the seller is also including a full original set of $14 factory rally rims with caps and rings in nice shape. This gives you some options when it comes to customizing the look of the car. The seller also notes that much work was done on the car about 10,000 miles ago, including new brake components, transmission fluid and filter, AC pump and evaporator, suspension components, water pump and hoses, and even some rust-free replacement doors and rear bumper from California. This shows that the previous owner really cared about maintaining the car and keeping it in good shape. Now, let's address some of the potential downsides. The seller mentions that the tires are weather-checked, which means they may need to be replaced soon. And while the car is described as being in good condition, it's important to keep in mind that this is a subjective term. Without seeing the car in person or getting a more detailed description of its condition, it's hard to say exactly what good means in this case. As for the price, the seller is asking $7,250 with both sets of rims, or $7,000 without the rally rims. While that might seem a bit steep for a car that's over 40 years old and may need some work, it's important to remember that classic Oldsmobiles like this one are becoming increasingly rare and desirable. And with the included upgrades and maintenance history, this Cutlass could be a great starting point for a restoration project or a fun weekend driver. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Oldsmobile Cutlass with some nice features and a bit of a story to tell, this 1982 model is definitely worth checking out. Just be sure to do your due diligence and get a thorough inspection before making any decisions. 7. We've got a real gem to share with you. A 1966 Chevrolet Corvair Monza Coupe that's been completely refurbished and is ready to hit the road. First off, let's talk about the condition of this beauty. According to the seller, the car has been completely redone from top to bottom, and it shows. The exterior has been repainted in a stunning artesian turquoise color that's sure to turn heads wherever you go. And the interior has been redone in a lovely fawn color that complements the exterior perfectly. Under the hood, you'll find a rebuilt 140 HP engine paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, which should provide plenty of power and a fun driving experience. The seller also notes that the suspension and brakes have been redone and the car has brand new tires, so you can feel confident hitting the road in this classic. One thing that really sets this Corvair apart is its rust-free condition. The seller mentions that the car has approximately 83,000 miles on it, with only 3,500 miles since the rebuild. That's pretty impressive for a car that's over 50 years old. But wait, there's more. The seller is also including a ton of extra parts with the sale, including the original 110 HP engine and Powerglide transmission, a core engine, a 3-speed transmission, service manuals, starters, carburetors, the original gauge cluster, and a complete set of wheels with good tires. This is a huge bonus for anyone looking to keep this classic running smoothly for years to come. As for the price, the seller is asking $12,500 for this Corvair. While that might seem a bit steep for some buyers, it's important to remember that classic cars like this one are becoming increasingly rare and desirable. And with the complete refurbishment and included extra parts, this Corvair is really a turnkey classic that's ready to be enjoyed. The seller doesn't mention anything about the car's location or availability for test drives, so if you're seriously interested, be sure to reach out and ask for more details. 8. We've got a real beast of a machine to share with you. A 1979 Oldsmobile Cutlass that's been built for both the street and the strip. First off, let's talk about the heart of this beast. Under the hood, you'll find a massive 1970 455 engine that's been built for serious performance. With 10.1 compression, a cam with 474 lift and 268 duration, a 750 Holley carburetor, headers, and dual exhaust, this engine is ready to roar. And with a JEGS high-performance manual shift, turbo 350 auto transmission, and a 3000 stall torque converter, you can expect lightning-fast shifts and incredible acceleration. But the performance upgrades don't stop there. This Cutlass also has a rebuilt 68 12-bolt Posey rear end with 456 gears, which means it's ready to launch hard and keep pulling all the way down the track. And with a telltale tach, you can keep a close eye on your RPMs and make sure you're always in the sweet spot. Now let's talk about the condition of this beast. According to the seller, all of the performance upgrades were done when the odometer was at 59,149 miles. Since then, the car has only been driven 14,293 miles, which means you can feel confident that all of those high-performance parts are still in great shape. And with a clean title and a stunning brown paint job, this Cutlass looks as good as it runs. But wait, there's more. For an extra $5,000, the seller is also offering an additional 455 engine with Scorpion lifters, high compression, and a 306 duration cam. This engine has never been run, which means it's ready to be dropped in and unleashed on the track. As for the price, the seller is asking $15,000 for this Cutlass. While that might seem a bit steep for some buyers, it's important to remember that this is no ordinary Oldsmobile. With its massive 455 engine, high-performance transmission, and track-ready rear end, this Cutlass is a serious machine that's built for speed. And with the included extra engine, you're really getting two high-performance power plants for the price of one. The seller doesn't mention anything about the car's location or availability for test drives, so if you're seriously interested, be sure to give them a call and ask for more details. Overall, if you're in the market for a serious street strip machine that's ready to tear up the track, this 1979 Oldsmobile Cutlass is definitely worth checking out. With its massive 455 engine, high-performance upgrades, and stunning good looks, this car is sure to turn heads and drop jaws wherever it goes. Just be prepared to hang on tight when you hit the gas. 9. We've got a real beauty to share with you. A 1979 Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz that's ready to hit the road. First off, let's talk about the condition of this classic. According to the seller, the car is in excellent condition and is very reliable for running and driving. They even go so far as to say that they would take it anywhere, which is a great sign of confidence in the car's mechanical soundness. Under the hood, you'll find a 5.7-liter engine that's ready to provide plenty of power for cruising down the highway or just running errands around town. And with a clean title and automatic transmission, this Eldorado is a turnkey classic that's ready to be enjoyed by its new owner. Now let's talk about the exterior. The seller mentions that there is no rot on the car, which is a huge plus for any classic vehicle. However, they do note that there are a couple of rusty spots on the trunk lid. While this is definitely something to keep in mind, it doesn't seem to be a major issue that would detract from the overall appearance or value of the car. As for the interior, the seller doesn't provide any specific details, but based on the overall condition of the car, it's likely that the interior is in good shape as well. And with that classic Cadillac style and comfort, you can expect to ride in style wherever you go. Now let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $4,500 or best offer for this Eldorado. While that might seem a bit steep for a car that's over 40 years old, it's important to remember that classic Cadillacs like this one are becoming increasingly rare and desirable. And with its excellent condition and reliable mechanical soundness, this Eldorado could be a great investment for any classic car enthusiast. The seller doesn't mention anything about the car's location or availability for test drives, so if you're seriously interested, be sure to reach out and ask for more details. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Cadillac that's ready to hit the road and turn heads wherever it goes, this 1979 Eldorado Biarritz is definitely worth checking out. With its excellent condition, reliable mechanics, and stunning blue exterior, this car is sure to provide plenty of smiles per mile for its lucky new owner. 10. We've got a real project car to share with you, a 1965 Lincoln Continental that's just waiting for the right person to bring it back to its former glory. First off, let's talk about the condition of this classic. The seller describes it as being in fair condition, which is a pretty honest assessment. They note that the body has minimal rust, which is always a good sign for a car of this age. However, they also mention that the car is not currently running and will need a new intake and carburetor to get it started again. Now, let's talk about the potential of this Continental. With its classic styling and luxurious interior, this car could be a real head-turner once it's been restored. And with only minimal rust to deal with, the bodywork shouldn't be too extensive. Of course, getting the engine running again will take some work, but for the right person, this could be a really rewarding project. One thing that sets this Continental apart is the fact that it's currently sitting on 22-inch rims. While this might not be to everyone's taste, it definitely gives the car a unique look that's sure to turn heads. And if you're not a fan of the larger wheels, you can always swap them out for something more period correct. As for the mileage, the seller notes that the dash shows 87,000 miles, but the true mileage is unknown. This is definitely something to keep in mind when considering this car, as higher mileage can mean more wear and tear on the engine and other components. Now let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $12,500 for this Continental, which might seem a bit steep for a non-running project car. However, it's important to remember that these classic Lincolns are becoming increasingly rare and desirable, and the minimal rust and overall potential of this car could make it a worthwhile investment for the right buyer. It's also worth noting that the seller will be providing a bill of sale only, which they say is all that's needed to register the car in Georgia. However, if you're considering purchasing this car and you live in another state, it's definitely worth doing your research to make sure you'll be able to register it without any issues. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Lincoln Continental project car, this 1965 model is definitely worth checking out. With its minimal rust, unique styling, and overall potential, this car could be a really rewarding project for the right person. 11. We've got a real gem to share with you, a 1979 Mercury Bobcat that's been seriously upgraded and is ready to hit the streets. First off, let's talk about the heart of this beast. Under the hood, you'll find a rebuilt 302 engine that's been fitted with a bigger cam for some extra power. And with a built C4 transmission and a Ford 9 rear end with 411 gears, this Bobcat is ready to lay down some serious rubber. But the upgrades don't stop there. This Bobcat has also been fitted with a Mustang II front end, which means it's got improved handling and steering compared to the stock setup. And with 5-lug Magnum 500 wheels, this car has a seriously aggressive stance that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. Now let's talk about the condition of this Bobcat. The seller doesn't provide a lot of details, but they do mention that the car runs great, which is always a good sign. And with only 59,090 miles on the odometer, this Bobcat has plenty of life left in it. As for the price, the seller is asking $7,500 for this Bobcat, which includes the chrome Magnum 500 wheels. However, if you're not interested in the wheels, the seller is willing to let the car go for $6,500. Considering all of the upgrades and the overall condition of the car, this seems like a pretty fair price for a seriously cool ride. It's worth noting that the seller doesn't provide any details about the interior or the overall condition of the body, So if you're seriously interested in this Bobcat, it's definitely worth reaching out to get more information. And as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. Overall, if you're in the market for a seriously upgraded classic that's ready to tear up the streets, this 1979 Mercury Bobcat is definitely worth checking out. With its rebuilt 302 engine, built transmission, and aggressive stance, this car is sure to provide plenty of smiles per mile. And with a clean title and a reasonable price tag, this Bobcat could be the perfect addition to any car enthusiast's collection. So why not reach out to the seller and see if this beast of a Bobcat is the right ride for you? 12. We've got a real beauty to share with you. A freshly restored 1965 Chevrolet Corvair that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Corvair. According to the seller, it's in excellent condition, and it's easy to see why. The car has just recently undergone a full restoration, which included all new bodywork, fresh paint, and brand new upholstery. The result is a stunning yellow Corvair that looks like it just rolled off the showroom floor. Under the rear deck lid, you'll find the Corvair's signature 2.7-liter flat-six engine, which produces 110 horsepower. The seller notes that the engine has no leaks and no smoke, which is always a good sign for a classic car. The engine is paired with a 2-speed Powerglide automatic transmission, which the seller notes has a small leak. However, this is a relatively minor issue that shouldn't detract from the overall driving experience. One unique feature of this Corvair is the Flowmaster exhaust system that was installed by the previous owner. This gives the car a distinct sound that's sure to turn heads. However, if you prefer a more stock appearance, the seller also includes a brand new, still-in-the-box stock muffler that can be easily swapped in. Now let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $15,000 for this Corvair, which may seem like a lot for a classic car. However, when you consider the amount of work and money that has gone into the restoration, it starts to make more sense. The seller notes that they have $20,000 invested in the car, so at $15,000, this is actually a pretty good deal for a fully restored Corvair. Of course, as with any classic car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. The seller doesn't provide any details about the car's maintenance history or any other potential issues, so it's important to do your due diligence and make sure everything checks out. Overall, if you're in the market for a beautifully restored classic Corvair, this 1965 model is definitely worth checking out. With its stunning yellow paint, brand new interior, and solid mechanical condition, this car is sure to provide plenty of smiles per mile. And with a clean Oregon title in hand, you can feel confident that you're getting a car with a clear history. 13. We've got a real gem to share with you. A 1974 Mercury Comet that's in very good condition and ready to hit the road. First off, let's talk about the engine. Under the hood, you'll find an inline 6-cylinder engine that's recently been tuned up. This means that the car should run smoothly and reliably, which is always a plus for any classic car. The seller doesn't provide any details about the specific size or output of the engine, but given the Comet's reputation for durability, it's likely a solid power plant. Paired with that engine is a 3-speed manual transmission, which is sure to provide a fun and engaging driving experience. There's just something about rowing your own gears that makes driving a classic car that much more enjoyable. Now, let's talk about the overall condition of this Comet. The seller describes it as being in very good condition, which is always a good sign. They don't provide any specific details about the car's history or any recent work that's been done, but they do mention that it has newer tires, which is a nice bonus. The odometer shows 90,007 miles, which is relatively low for a car of this age. Of course, it's always a good idea to verify the accuracy of the odometer reading, but assuming it's correct, this Comet has plenty of life left in it. As for the price, the seller is asking $10,000 for this Comet. While that may seem like a lot for a classic car, it's important to keep in mind that well-maintained examples of the Comet are becoming increasingly rare. And given the car's very good condition and recent tune-up, it could be a solid investment for the right buyer. One thing to note is that the seller is offering delivery of this Comet which could be a convenient option for buyers who aren't local. However, it's always a good idea to see a car in person before making a final decision, so if you're seriously interested in this Comet, it might be worth making the trip to check it out firsthand. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Mercury Comet that's in very good condition and ready to hit the road, this 1974 model is definitely worth checking out. With its recently tuned-up inline-six engine, 3-speed manual transmission, and newer tires, this car is sure to provide plenty of smiles per mile. And while the price may be a bit steep for some buyers, the car's rarity and condition could make it a worthwhile investment for the right enthusiast. In 14, we've got a real beauty to share with you. A 1973 Ford Galaxy 500 Country Sedan station wagon that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. First off, let's talk about the history of this car. According to the seller, it's had only 2 owners from new, with the current owner having had it since 1975. That's a long time to hold on to a car, which suggests that it's been well loved and cared for over the years. The seller also notes that this Galaxy was built at the Twin Cities Ford assembly plant in Highland, which is a cool bit of history for any Ford enthusiast. Now, let's talk about the condition of this wagon. The seller describes it as being in excellent condition, and based on the photos, it's easy to see why. The original interior looks fantastic, with no visible tears or wear on the seats or carpets. The exterior also looks great, with a beautiful brown paint job that's sure to stand out from the crowd. Under the hood, you'll find a 400M V8 engine paired with an automatic transmission. The seller notes that the car has recently undergone a complete tune-up, as well as having a new master cylinder and dual exhaust installed. This suggests that the car has been well maintained and should be ready to hit the road. One unique feature of this Galaxy is the customized gauge cluster. The original owner apparently moved the heater controls below the dash so that he could have his engine gauges in plain sight. While this might not be to everyone's taste, the seller notes that it's easily moved back to the original configuration if desired. As for the price, the seller is asking $9,500 for this Galaxy. While that may seem like a lot for a station wagon, it's important to keep in mind that well-maintained examples of classic Fords like this one are becoming increasingly rare. And given the car's excellent condition and recent service, it could be a solid investment for the right buyer. The seller also notes that they have been collecting Fords for 55 years, which suggests that they know a thing or two about these cars. They mention that they have too many cars and need to sell some off, which could be a good opportunity for a buyer to snag a great deal on a cool classic. 15, we've got a real treat for you. A 1985 Chevrolet Corvette that's ready to hit the road and turn some heads. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Vetta. The seller describes it as a beautiful car that's very fun to drive, which is always a good sign. They don't mention any major issues or damage, so it seems like this Corvette has been well cared for over the years. One of the standout features of this particular Corvette is the low mileage. With only around 42,000 miles on the odometer, this car has a lot of life left in it. It's rare to find a classic sports car with such low mileage, so this could be a great opportunity for a collector or enthusiast. Another cool feature of this Corvette is the T-top roof. There's just something about cruising down the road with the wind in your hair that makes driving a sports car that much more enjoyable. And with a clean title and a manual 4-speed transmission, this Corvette is sure to provide plenty of smiles per mile. Now, it's worth noting that the seller mentions this car is currently on non-op status in California. This means that it's not currently registered or legal to drive on public roads in that state. However, this isn't necessarily a deal breaker. It just means that the buyer will need to go through the process of getting the car registered and roadworthy before they can enjoy it to the fullest. As for the price, the seller is asking $7,000 for this Corvette. While that may seem like a lot for a car that's almost 40 years old, it's actually a pretty fair price for a low-mileage, well-maintained classic sports car. And given the Corvette's enduring popularity and collectability, it could be a solid investment for the right buyer. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. The seller doesn't provide any details about the car's maintenance history or any recent work that's been done, so it's important to do your due diligence and make sure everything checks out. 16. We've got a real gem to share with you. A 1985 Cadillac Seville that's in great shape and ready for a new owner. First off, let's talk about the history of this car. According to the seller, they bought it from the elderly lady who originally purchased it new, making them only the second owner. That's always a good sign when it comes to classic cars, as it suggests that the vehicle has been well cared for over the years. Now let's talk about the condition of this Seville. The seller describes it as being in good condition, and based on the details they provide, it's easy to see why. Apparently, the seller has spent over $8,000 on the car within the last year, having it gone through at a local Cadillac dealership. While they don't list all the specific work that was done, they do mention that they have all the receipts and can provide more details to serious buyers. One thing that really stands out about this Seville is the low mileage. With only 88,121 miles on the odometer, this car has a lot of life left in it, and given the recent work that's been done, it seems like it's ready to provide many more miles of driving enjoyment. Under the hood, you'll find an 8-cylinder engine, which is a common power plant for Cadillacs of this era. The seller notes that the car runs and drives 100%, which is always a good sign. They also mention that it has a clean Kansas title and is free and clear, so there shouldn't be any issues with transferring ownership. As for the price, the seller is asking $6,950 for this Seville. They mentioned that they had previously listed it for $8,950, but have since lowered the price. While that may still seem like a lot for a car that's almost 40 years old, it's important to keep in mind the recent work that's been done and the car's overall condition. And given the seller's willingness to consider reasonable offers, there may be some room for negotiation. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. The seller seems willing to provide more details and receipts to serious buyers, which is a good sign. And if the car checks out, it could be a great opportunity to own a classic Cadillac that's in great shape. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic luxury car that's ready to hit the road, this 1985 Cadillac Seville is definitely worth checking out. With its low mileage, recent maintenance, and overall good condition, this car has a lot to offer for the right buyer. And while the price may be a bit steep for some, the seller's willingness to negotiate and consider offers makes it a compelling option for anyone looking to add a classic caddy to their collection. 17. Let me tell you about this fascinating 1968 Ford Thunderbird I found on Craigslist. For $4,000, you're looking at a piece of American automotive history that's actually pretty interesting. This T-Bird comes with the mighty 429 V8 engine, the original one. And here's the good news. It still runs, drives, and revs without issues. That's pretty impressive for a car that's over half a century old. The odometer shows 99,999, but it has rolled over, which means this bird has definitely spread its wings quite a bit over the years. The seller has put some serious work into keeping this classic running. We're talking fresh tires all around, an upgraded alternator, smart move, new belts, and they've even replaced all the lighting. The electric window motors are new too, which is great because those vintage power windows can be a real headache. Plus, they've rebuilt the transmission and replaced the torque converter seals. That's some serious maintenance right there. The interior is reportedly in great condition, which is a big plus for these old luxury coupes. However, I should mention that the AC isn't working. But hey, that's pretty common for cars of this vintage. Being honest with you all, while $4,000 might seem like a lot for a project car, consider this. You're getting a classic Thunderbird with a clean title, the desirable 429 engine, and quite a few recent repairs. Sure, it'll need some love, especially that AC, but for someone looking to get into classic car ownership, this could be a solid starting point. Just remember, this is a 55-year-old car, so expect to do some wrenching. But that's part of the classic car experience, right? 18. Let me tell you about this interesting piece of American automotive history. A 1966 AMC Rambler Ambassador 440 convertible that's currently listed for $2,500. This isn't your everyday classic, folks. Let's be real here. AMC convertibles are pretty rare birds, and this white beauty with red interior comes with some interesting features. It's powered by a straight-six engine paired with an automatic transmission, and the current owners have been keeping it under a dust cover, which shows they care about preservation. The good news? The car runs and drives, has a new battery, and all the essential systems are working: brakes, signals, headlights, and taillights. The convertible top mechanism is functioning well, which is huge for a convertible of this age, and the tires have good tread. Now let's be transparent about a few things. The driver's side window needs some TLC, their words, and while it can be driven home, the current owner recommends a trailer for long distances over 150 miles. That's something to consider. The odometer shows 30,000 miles, but given its age, we should take that with a grain of salt. However, it's worth noting that this is classified as a collector vehicle, meaning it's exempt from regular mileage-based registration requirements. At $10,500 firm, and they're very firm on this price, you're looking at a relatively rare piece of AMC history. While it's not perfect, it appears to be a solid running example of a model that's becoming increasingly hard to find, especially in convertible form. Remember, these AMC convertibles are getting scarcer by the year, and finding one that's both running and complete isn't easy. Just make sure to inspect it thoroughly if you're interested. These old classics always have their quirks. 19. Let's talk about this 1966 AMC Ambassador DPL that's popped up on Craigslist for $8,000. This is one of those interesting pieces of American automotive history that often gets overlooked. What we've got here is a clean title Ambassador with AMC's robust 327 V8 under the hood, paired with an automatic transmission. With 98,000 miles on the clock, it's actually got relatively reasonable mileage for its age. The seller's being straight with us. It's a driving project, but one with good bones. Here's what's particularly appealing. They mention there's no rust, which is huge for a car from '66. The mechanical fundamentals seem solid too. It runs and drives well, with good brakes and steering. Two critical systems you don't want to mess with. The interior is halfway through restoration, which means you've got a head start on the cosmetics, but still have room to make it your own. Being honest here, this isn't a fully restored show car. It's what we'd call a solid driver that needs some finishing touches. But at $8,000, you're getting a relatively rare AMC with a V8, no rust issues, and good mechanicals. That's actually pretty reasonable in today's classic car market, especially considering how prices have been climbing for vintage American iron. For anyone interested in standing out from the usual Chevys and Fords at car shows, this Ambassador could be a really interesting choice. Just remember, parts availability might be a bit more challenging than with more common classics. What do you think about this piece of AMC history? Would you give this Ambassador a shot? 20. Let me tell you about this 1978 Chevy Corvette that's just popped up for $11,000 in the Monterey area. This is a classic C3 that seems to be in pretty solid shape. We're looking at a silver T-top coupe with an oyster leather interior, one of those classic color combinations that really works on these late 70s Vettas. Under the hood, you've got the trusty 350 V8 paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission. And here's the good part. The seller states there are no mechanical issues. With 66,000 miles on the clock, that's actually pretty reasonable mileage for a car of this age. What's particularly reassuring is that it recently passed smog with flying colors, which can be a real headache with classic cars in California. The clean title and no accident history are definitely big pluses too. Being straight with you all, while $11,000 might seem a bit strong for a '78 Vetta, the market for clean C3s has been trending upward. The fact that this one has relatively low miles, no reported mechanical issues, and is smog compliant in California adds real value. Just remember, even a well-maintained C3 Corvette will need regular attention. It's part of the classic car experience. But with this one, you're getting a turnkey classic that you can actually drive and enjoy right away. What do you think about this silver beauty? Would you give this C3 a new garage to call home?